today to share our views on the talent journey from awareness to application. I know sometimes it's really tough to get an hour out of one's day to attend webinars, so really great to have you with us today. We hope this will be an interesting session. Of course, this session is jam-packed with some data points that we have from our research. Of course, research is our foundation. That's how we know talent, and we currently have the biggest millennial study on career preferences around the world. Of course, because we only have an hour, we have 10 markets to cover, so we have attendees today from across APAC. Of course, we will not be able to share everything in depth, but we will be able to share some snippets from the different markets with you today to contextualize things, and hopefully this will give you some good insight. If any of your questions that you're really concerned about around this topic are not answered today, you're of course very welcome to reach out to us afterwards for more insights. But let's get started without further ado. So some of you might already know Universum. For those of you that are joining us new, I just want to give a quick overview of who we are and what we do. So of course, Universum is currently the global leader in employer branding. So we help, most of the Fortune 500 to develop as well as communicate their employer brand successfully to attract, recruit, and retain talent. We've been doing employer branding since before employer branding was even a term. So we started 25 years ago in Sweden. Since then, we've grown into a global organization with offices now around the world. And for example, my colleague Wen that introduced the session today is actually based in Shanghai, whilst I am based in Singapore. Our foundation is, of course, in research. As I mentioned already, we have the biggest research into career preferences of its kind. With our research covering over 40 markets by now, we understand what makes talent tick, why do they choose certain companies over others as their ideal employers, what are their expectations, what is putting them off, what are their fears, etc. And with these insights, we of course help you to shape and further develop your employer brands to win the talent war that is currently going on. I mean, as we all know, the talent landscape is extremely competitive in the APAC region. Over and above, from our research origin, we of course also have our consulting and communication solutions. So to just put myself into context, heading up our activation solutions out of Singapore for the APAC region, I help employers to understand how they can turn data into insight and actual actionable solutions, campaigns, and also communication strategies to, of course, engage talent and then in the end also recruit the people that they need to take their business to the next level. So very briefly, that's who we are. If you don't know our approach to employer branding yet, this is our strategic approach. It consists out of 6 steps. So starting, of course, first with market intelligence, looking at external desires, perceptions, and expectations. Then we also have the internal piece, looking into the organization internally to understand the employer brand and the position of the employer brand. From there, we of course go into the strategy development. Layered upon that is the communication strategy. Based on those 2 components, the strategy of course gets executed, and above all, whatever we do, it always gets measured. So that's our wheel of employer branding, as we call it. Today we will be focusing on only 2 parts of that wheel, namely the communication strategy and strategy execution. So to kick this session off, let's talk about the war for talent. Of course, so over the past couple of years, the talent landscape has changed completely, and there's various reasons for that, and we will also talk about that very briefly. But if we look at the market dynamics, previously recruitment was dictated by companies. That's of course changed completely. Top talent these days dictate recruitment. If we look into the career choice rationale of talent, previously they were looking at industry, then they were looking at the company profile, then they were looking into the job title and then the actual contents of the job. And now we see more and more so that it's actually the work environment that shapes talent perception and also desire to join a company, and that's of course what makes an organization such as Google extremely successful. Through these changing dynamics, the role of HR has, of course, changed and is continuously changing dramatically, of course, as well. So initially it was operational, based on ad hoc recruiting to fill positions for the company. Many companies are still in a transformational stage, turning it into a more strategic practice where HR is part of the C-suite and decisions are made based on data, and employer branding plays a huge role in the recruitment, and recruiting is strategic, not just to fill positions. That, of course, is also impacted by how we source talent. So traditionally, we had mail, we had telephone, we had face-to-face. Then the next generation came in with laptops, mobiles, etc. And what we're seeing now with many companies that we're talking to is that they're moving into the space of creating talent communities rather than to source talent to join their organizations. And of course, having an employer brand and managing the employer brand through managing the talent community is of essence. So the field, the industry, the practice of HR is changing very, very rapidly, and will continue to do so. Let's look at a few reasons of why that could be. So first of all, of course, our technology has changed completely. We now live in the world of the Internet of everything, the age of Internet of everything. So what that means is we're, of course, online 24/7. We're connected 365 days a year. We've got mobiles, we've got laptops, we've got the cloud. These dynamics have completely changed how we work. Modern technology has, of course, also changed how we go on holiday or how we travel. It's changed how we do business. It's changed how we invest. It's changed overall, especially how we communicate. I mean, a lot of companies now rely purely on technologies such as Skype or GoToMeeting or Zoom and such alike to facilitate interaction across locations at all hours of the day. And all of these dynamics are shaping how we recruit, of course, as well, because they are giving rise to new technologies on how we can reach out to talent. And new technologies, new platforms are mushrooming up continuously. So this is, of course, making it also very complex for HR and employer branding specialists to decide, how are we actually going to communicate with talent? What are we going to focus on? Are we going to do everything, or are we going to focus on doing a few things well? On top of that, we of course have our friends the millennials, or perhaps because of that, they are the way they are. And from what we know, of course, from our research and also from your experiences, millennials, they are usually defined as the me generation, or misunderstood as the me generation. But definitely, if we look at what the career expectations are of this generation, they really want it all. So to explain what that means very briefly for those of you that are new to Universum, let's quickly look at our framework on how we understand career preferences and career choices of talent in this day and age. So now you are looking at our Universum Drivers of Employer Attractiveness framework. This framework is trademarked to Universum and quoted in HR textbooks as well. We've developed it with occupational psychologists as well as PhD students and also HR professionals, and it consists out of 4 quadrants which each have 10 attributes. So basically 40 reasons for choosing your ideal employer. So looking at each quadrant separately, first we of course have employer reputation and image. This refers to everything externally to the organization. So everything from attractive and exciting products and services to corporate social responsibility, prestige, market success, innovation, and such alike. Then we've got job characteristics. This refers to people's perception of the contents and demands of the job. So it doesn't actually refer to an actual job offer that they have on the table and their perception of that, but in general what a job might be like at a company. And as part of this driver, we have everything from challenging work, interacting with clients, team-oriented work, professional training and development, and such alike. The third driver then is people and culture. This of course refers to the social environment of the workplace, and as we've seen before, this is becoming increasingly more important. So here we look at, is the work environment perceived as creative and dynamic? Is it friendly? Is there an acceptance towards minorities, the gender equality, and et cetera, et cetera. And then lastly, we've got the hard facts, which are, of course, remuneration and advancement opportunities. Here we've got all of the monetary aspects, such as the competitive benefits and salary, as well as looking towards future career progression. So anything from, your leadership opportunities, high future earnings, sponsorship for future education, and such alike. So based on these 40 attributes, we understand from talent, number one, what is it that they expect from employers, and also why do they choose employers as ideal, and lastly, what is actually important to them these days. And usually, most employers, actually where they spend most of their resources is in terms of developing employer reputation and image. However, when we look into the next slides, this is actually not the reason anymore why talent, especially the millennials, choose employers. Rather, the reason, basically their level of consideration, the reason why they even think of you as a company to work for starts there, namely their positive perception of you as an employer. However, the reasons that they will choose you will come from the other three quadrants, almost in equal measure. Of course, for some countries this is different. So, for example, remuneration and advancement opportunities in India are much, much more important. However, in markets such as Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, even more of the emerging economies such as Malaysia, we see people and culture coming out most strongly. So clearly talent deciding on employers based on their perception of the work environment that they're going to have there. So let's look into some data points that we have, namely the top three expectations that talent have of employers if they were to put together their wish list. So here we have the 10 markets that we currently cover in APAC as part of our syndicated research. So that's our research that we do every single year. Here we are looking into the preferences of business students. And very briefly then, in the next slide, we will also compare that to the preferences of engineering and IT students. And we will not go into this in depth, but you will, of course, also get this presentation. So when you have more time to look at it today, you will see that the reasons that talent are choosing employers, their top three reasons, are coming out of remuneration, advancement opportunities, people and culture, and job characteristics, as I mentioned. And in some markets, even across business and IT, there is some overlap, so we can see high future earnings being really important, a friendly working environment being really important, and professional training and development as well. So in some ways, they're similar, but of course, in some ways, most of the markets are quite different. However, one thing is very clear. If we look at this into their top three preferences and then even into their top five preferences on average, employer reputation doesn't even feature as one of the top drivers as to why they're choosing employers, right? So although it's still important to develop, of course, your employer reputation and image in a positive way for them to even consider you as an employer, these days with the millennials we need to go a step further because they are such conscious consumers and really build out attractiveness in terms of people and culture, job characteristics, and then also remuneration and advancement opportunities in terms of how far they can take their career with the organization. So this is, of course, having massive impacts, not only in terms of how we recruit and how we communicate with talent, but also our internal organization. So if you attended the last webinar that Raquel hosted, then you already, or one of her presentations, then you're also already very well familiar with this slide, but I just wanted to recap it again for those that are new to us. So the millennials are, of course, slowly taking over. So by 2015, they will will be already by a third. They will form already a third of the population within an organization or within the workforce, and then that of course steadily increases over time. And then if we look into, again, expectations in more detail, 50% of the millennials would rather have a job that they feel passionate about rather than one that they hate, right? So it's all about passion. It's all about wanting to work and feeling that it's part of one's life. 80% feel that the work environment is more important than the size of their paycheck. And we've even done a compensation and benefits survey here in Singapore last year, and we even found that some of them were prepared to give up $500 of their paycheck just to know that they would have a friendly manager. 87% say the ability to learn and grow is really essential within their ideal job, so they don't want to feel that they're going to be stuck in the same position for the next 10 years. They think that they deserve more recognition than they get. Generally, they're not completely satisfied with the jobs that they have. They will definitely, or 33% of them will choose recognition over higher pay. And 90% of them believe that they deserve their dream job. And of course, the origin of this is of course, in some aspects media, in some aspects also the result of employer branding, but also, of course, of parents telling their children that they deserve to get what they want. Because what we also need to remember about millennials, this is the first generation that grew up with both parents in the workforce. And this is why work-life balance is also coming out so strongly with this generation, because they know what it means to have both parents in the workforce and what it means when they don't have time for the family and investing time into their children. So that's something really important to keep in mind here as well. So these dynamics together, so new communication solutions, new ways of working, together with changing talent preferences are of course completely changing how we recruit and attract talent. And of course, the millennials are really pushing our boundaries in terms of how we communicate our employer brands and how we reach out to them. I always call this generation the always-on generation. So 91% of them literally sleep next to their phones. So I'm sure some of you do this as well. The phone is also, of course, the alarm clock. The first thing they do when they wake up is look at, what emails or which Facebook messages they got in the morning. 65% of them create content on an ongoing basis by uploading photos that they have taken, for example. 76% curate content that they share on social networks. And then, of course, 88% of them are really conscious about maintaining a social network. And this, of course, extends to China as well. I mean, we talk a lot about Facebook at Universum because we know it's such a great channel for employer branding, and we will look into that a little bit further in a bit. But, of course, in China, when we look at Weibo and the social networks that are available there, the same principles apply. So this generation is always on. They are generally really experiencing a situation of information overload. There is a lot of noise, a lot of brands pushing out messages, not just in terms of consumer marketing, but also, of course, employer marketing or employer branding. So you would think if they're always on, it's really easy to reach out to them and to get their attention. However, because there is so much noise, it's of course really tough to capture their attention and to retain that retention. So a lot of people are also saying that millennials have an extremely short attention span because they are so used to multitasking as well. So I know, speaking to some students and even some professionals, generally when they read an article or watch a video clip, if within the first 10 seconds it didn't grab them, or the first paragraph it didn't grab them, it's very unlikely that they're going to watch the video to its end or read the entire article. So it's very tough to get them to commit to the messaging that we're putting out there. So what we need to do as employers when we communicate our employer brands is we need to cut through the noise. And we can do this in two ways. First of all, we of course need to choose the right channels when we communicate, and then second of all, we need to communicate the right things. So we're going to look into the first section now, namely choosing the right channels. So as I mentioned before, we live in an internet of everything. It's extremely daunting for employers these days to decide on which communication channels to choose for their employer branding. Am I going to do only campus? Am I only going to do digital? Am I going to do Weibo and Renren, and am I then on top of that also going to do LinkedIn for professionals? Am I going to start with job boards? Am I going to stop that? Am I going to do TV advertisement, etc., etc.? So there are a lot of questions around this in employers' minds. And of course, in our research, we seek to answer these questions as well. So we've also developed this framework to assess, the world of opportunities that we have in terms of reaching out to talent. And as you can see, this framework consists of 4 quadrants again. So first we have all the print channels, everything from magazines and other periodicals and books to all the digital channels, from your career website, your job boards, your social media, your targeted emails and such alike. Then we've got all your in-person communications. These are of course the communications that you execute on campus when you engage with students. And then we've of course also got the more traditional media, the other channels as we call them here, which include direct mail. So I'm not sure if you've seen the IKEA, it's a consumer ad, but I'm sure some of you have seen the IKEA ad that's come out recently where they really push their print products through direct mail, but actually integrating that with digital. So if you haven't seen that yet, that's a really great campaign. So some people still believe in direct mail, or some companies still believe in direct mail. So one of the questions would be, does it also work for employer branding? Equally, how about outdoor and billboard advertisement, radio advertisement, TV advertisement? Which of these should we really invest in? And let's face it, we all have limited budgets that we can spend on employer branding and reaching out to talent. So in order to analyze this and understand where we should put our money, we need to ask ourselves certain questions. So first of all, we need to understand what is the goal, what is our objective, and this should relate to your general struggles or challenges that you currently have. So for example, is it awareness? Are not enough of your talent target group aware of you as an employer? Or do they perhaps consider you, but then they don't actually desire working for you? Or even though they desire to work for you, they don't actually apply. So these type of challenges you could consider when deciding on your objective. Also, what are the communication preferences of your target group? Of course, this is very important because you don't want to invest in a channel that they're not going to use. How many people can you reach out through this channel? This is really important in terms of, if you choose a channel that has great exposure, you're of course more likely to reach out to talent rather than a channel that has very limited exposure. So it's a very good question to ask yourself as well. Furthermore, and this is a question that comes up through the digital age that we're now living in, where we can target our campaigns exactly towards the people that we want to reach out to. So can you reach out exactly to the target group you want to communicate to with this channel? Can you track how effective the channel is at achieving your goal? Can you leverage the channel whenever you need to, or do you need to wait until, for example, you can go onto campus again? And looking, of course, at your budget, can the channel deliver the results in a cost-effective manner? So these are some key questions that you should ask yourself with your channel selection. So applying that to our framework, let's quickly go through the benefits and pitfalls of each category. So firstly, print. Print still has a space in employer branding. It's quickly going out of fashion. However, in some cases, it still works. For example, one thing that we know print is very good at is creating awareness. So For example, if you think about you're sitting on the train and you're reading your newspaper and you see an advertisement by Audi, for example, you see the brand plants itself into your mind, and then later when a market researcher asks you which is your favorite car brand, you're more likely to recall Audi. So it's the same with employer branding. So, it has its space, still employer branding. However, what print is not very good at is, of course, converting people to apply. So we almost call that a barrier of entry, because, of course, you can have your link to your career website in your advertisement, but then afterwards, there's no direct way into your career website or your job portal from that print advertisement, is there? So talent will first have to go online and actually input your link step by step to come through to your career website. So we know from, talking to talent, of course, our research, that this will only happen if your print advertisement is extremely, extremely compelling. And at least from what I've seen on campus, all these beautiful flyers, etc., that we produce, often talent collected at the career fair, and then at the end of the career fair, they looked at it a little bit, but at some point it goes into the bin. So although print has its place in employer branding, in terms of effectiveness, we would say it's okay. For awareness, it has its place. If we look then in terms of cost efficiency, it's also sort of average. You can think about it. If awareness is a challenge for you, you could definitely think about print. However, be aware that you cannot track print. You have no idea whether the people you actually wanted to reach out to will see your print advertisement. And equally, it's almost like a barrier of entry to your career website. Then furthermore, we of course have all of our in-person communications, what you're doing on campus. In-person communications can be extremely effective depending on the people that you send to campus. So that's why if we measure effectiveness, you see the little radars here that just popped up on my screen. It can be either quite effective or sort of averagely effective. So what I see a lot when I go to career fairs is there is a certain amount of insecurity, not just with talent, but also with the employers standing behind the career fair booth. So they will feel a little bit unsure sometimes in terms of how to actually engage the students and actually talk to them and getting them interested in the company. So that's where, in-person communications can be sort of mediocrely effective. However, of course, on the flip end, if you bring people to campus that are extremely compelling, people that are really engaging, that are not afraid to just grab talent and then, tell them all about the wonderful working environment that they experience at your organization and share their story and share their experience, that can be extremely compelling. So I know, for example, one of the local banks here in Singapore has made a big impact by sending not just HR people to campus, but actually some of their senior leaders and doing campus talks. And not only does that, of course, get more people to actually attend the campus talk, but also it's very inspiring when those leaders then share their experiences, and it's really effective in creating desire. However, if we look at costs, and not just in terms of actual costs, but also opportunity costs, it can be very difficult to get everybody together at the same time to go to campus and make enough time. If you're in a large country like Australia or India or China, it can be really, really tough to go visit all of your campuses and then also align with, the opportunities that you actually have to go to campus according to the university calendar. So in terms of cost efficiency, it can be a bit of a problem. Another problem for me with career fairs or campus talks and such like is you can't really track it. So perhaps you have talent signing up at the door for your campus talk, but then afterwards, what happens? Do you have a mechanism to actually track whether the people that attended your campus talk were part of your target group? Or do you have a mechanism to track whether those people that attended your career fair actually then also went through to apply? Most employers do not. Now, if we then look into the other channels, these are the expensive channels. So I'm sure you already know that radio, TV, outdoor, direct mail is all extremely expensive, and only very few employers actually invest in that. And there's a very good reason for that as well. So if we think about radio advertisement, right? I mean, the main aim of employer branding is, of course, not only to create awareness and attractiveness of you as an employer, but at the end of the day, what you want to achieve is them having them apply to your opportunities and working for you, isn't it? So if we think of, for example, TV advertisement, when you're watching TV and you're consuming or enjoying your favorite TV show, are you really going to enjoy an employer branding ad and then go directly to your computer to apply to that opportunity? Is that really going to happen? Probably not. Equally, let's think about radio advertisement. Let's picture that you're driving and you're listening to a radio ad promoting an opportunity with a company to work for. When you're driving, you're probably going to be very unlikely to stop at the side of the road to immediately go to that career website and apply to that opportunity. So with these channels, you need to be really hit the nail on the head to make sure that the opportunity and your brand sticks in their mind, so that later they will go back to actually applying to you. But then on top of that, the other problem is, of course, that you can't really track that at all. I mean, before you launch these campaigns, of course, you can choose programs and such like that would coincide with who your target group is. But then over and above that, how can you track that, you know, the business student at, you know, Nanyang University actually saw your ad? How are you going to track that? And how are you going to track that they actually reacted upon it? So for these reasons, we don't really see the other channels as very effective in employer branding. Lastly, we of course have digital. Digital has of course changed completely how we advertise, and of course it's having a very big impact on employer branding as well. We see, and I will show you some data on this in a minute, your career website is extremely important in terms of converting talent to apply. Your social media activities are going to definitely pay off more and more as you invest in that if you do it well, because that's what talent is interested in. Then, of course, what's beneficial about social media and you know, all the other digital channels, of course, as well, is that you can accurately track from A to Z where you're converting them, where you're losing them, where did they come from, which of your activities are actually working for you, which are not. Are they actually achieving your goals in the way that you intended, or is it not actually leading to application? Are you reaching out to exactly the target group that you wanted to talk to, because that you can 100% target with digital, because of course we live our lives now on digital. So for these reasons, because it's so great at targeting and tracking, we really believe that digital is great. Of course, you know, talent is also of course on the digital channels every day, consuming, you know, their newspapers, their videos, their everything through their phone or through their laptops or their computers. So we see great opportunities for employers in the digital space across the world, and of course also across APAC, as more and more countries are coming more and more online. And then the beauty of digital, of course, is also that it's very cost effective in comparison to the other channels. And you can do a lot of testing in terms of messaging, in terms of the visuals that you use before you, you know, spend so much money going to the printers and printing something that actually doesn't work. So for these reasons, we see a lot of employers loving it. But let's look at our recruitment funnel and how this fits in. So of course the talent journey starts with awareness. So do students know about you? And as I mentioned, different channels are good for different things. So after awareness, we of course have considerations. As we mentioned before, you know, your employer reputation plays into consideration. If they have a positive perception of you, they're more likely to consider you as an employer. Then, of course, it comes to desire, right? And this is where Google is so successful, because they have just captured talents' hearts and minds, and have really become that dream of a company that talent wants to join. And then lastly, of course, it comes to the bottom line, what we really care about here, and that's application, getting the right people into the organization to take the organization to the next level. So if we look at the communication channels in terms of what is good for what, we first have, of course, print, as I mentioned. It's great for awareness. Digital is, of course, also great for awareness, purely because talent love digital and because of its tremendous outreach. Then we have consideration. Again, digital is fantastic at building your brand. On top of that, we've got your in-person communications. So as I mentioned before, if you go to campus and you bring really compelling people, people that are passionate about your company, people that love to work for you and that can articulate that really well and create also that desire, then in-person can be wonderful. So in-person as well as digital is fantastic for creating desire. But then, of course, lastly, when we look at the bottom line as to where they actually apply, this is, of course, online, your career website. I mean, I only know very, very few employers that still accept CVs by mail, so most of you are doing this online. So if we then kind of look at the picture here, the overall picture that we're getting here, online seems to be sort of the golden thread. So whilst you can still be investing in, of course, print and in person, and of course you should always still go on campus. So if you've already met Raquel and talked to Raquel, you've probably already heard this. But if you think about the career fair and you might think, oh, why are we still going there? You definitely still need to go to the career fair. Most people, with students, if you don't go to the career fair, will wonder, well, why did the company not go there this year? Are they not recruiting? So it's really essential. But equally, social media is taking that same place. So after the career fair, when they go online to LinkedIn, to Facebook, etc., and they don't find you online, they will also ask, oh, why are they not online? Are they not recruiting? What's the situation here? How can I find out more? And that's, of course, also important for your career website, right? If they go to your career website, they really want to find all of the information that they're looking for there. And if there is not enough information, they're probably not going to apply. So if we look at digital and answering the questions that I mentioned before, it's a great channel for being able to reach out exactly to my target group. I can track exactly how effective it is for achieving my goal. And the other nice thing, and how it complements going onto campus beautifully, is that I can leverage digital all year long. Right? I don't need to take a pause in terms of promoting my employer brand or in terms of recruiting, because I can work according to my own schedule. I can work according to my own needs, and I don't need to wait for the university to promote to announce when they're going to have their recruitment days this year. So in countries such as India, where you of course have your intricate campus recruitment system, this is also a reason why digital is becoming more and more popular there. Now, as I promised, I will also share with you the communication preferences of your target groups. And I'm just going to highlight a few markets here. If your market is not listed in the next couple of slides, you can, of course, reach out to me afterwards for the data. So, for example, looking at Singapore, here we've got the top communication channel listed. So number one is still career fairs. However, that's followed very, very closely by the employer website. And then thirdly, social networks and communities. Then if we look further into Thailand, here social networks and communities are actually number one, followed by employer websites, and then they also listed TV advertisement. So here I would actually say to you, take that with a pinch of salt. Of course, we all love a TV advertisement in a way. However, if we look at your budget, if you look at your outcomes and what you need to achieve in terms of employer branding, TV advertisement, although it might be a preferred channel for talent, this is not a channel I would really invest in. unless I had lots and lots of money lying around that I could spend very freely. So I would really focus on the other channels instead. Let's look at Vietnam. So interestingly here as well, we have the same trends. So social networks coming out top, followed by employer websites. And then again, we have TV advertisements. So funnily enough, they're very, very similar, although they're such different markets when it comes to communication preferences. Then we've also got Malaysia. So in Malaysia, the career fair is still #1. But then we've also got the social network and community and also the employer website. So these are all very, very different markets, of course, and you know that because you're operating in them. However, it's interesting to see that there are some commonalities in terms of their communication preferences. So as you can also see, students, and this is not just applies to students but also to professionals, talent in general, they're relying more and more heavily on digital channels to discover employers. And it is really essential that your presence here is spot on. So for example, if you have a career website, it's really important for you to know that a lot of talent is starting to apply for your opportunities through their mobile. So it's really important that your career website is optimized for mobile and also for iPads or other tablets. So we're not necessarily saying that you should have an app. App is a completely different dimension and a completely different discussion, but your employer website should definitely be optimized towards mobile, and it should be super compelling. I mean, this is the interface through which they're applying to. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Now let's talk a bit about social media. For interest's sake, we're going to look at just two markets in the next section. So the first one is Singapore, the next one is China. So if we look at social media and we think about career, that probably means LinkedIn, right? I mean, that's the career network. However, if we look, and for the professionals, that's absolutely true in a lot of markets. However, if we look at students, we see that actually they list Facebook as their top social media for career, followed by YouTube, Instagram, and then only in 4th place, LinkedIn and Twitter, finally. So that's, of course, very, very interesting, and that's, of course, something you should take into account when you choose your channels. I mean, I know everybody's jumped onto the LinkedIn wagon, and it's definitely a wonderful platform to reach out to talent. However, what you need to realize about students is that they generally only join LinkedIn towards the last months of their academic career, or even after they've graduated, because they suddenly realize this is a great platform to find a job. So for building your employer brand towards students and fresh graduates, it's not the ideal channel. And we even have more in-depth data on this. So, of course, Facebook is commonly associated as the social network. However, what we need to realize is that Facebook has completely changed over the last couple of years. Now, it's become more of a news hub. So when you go to Facebook, you're not necessarily just there to communicate with your friends and to share pictures, etc., but rather you're there to find out about the latest things that are happening within your network, things that are trending, things that people are currently worrying about, etc. So if we ask students, well, are you using it only for your social purposes? More than 45% of them say, no, I'm actually using it for my career purposes. And, they're on it several times per day, if not constantly checking it. So over half of the student population in Singapore is using this network the whole time. And every time they're on it, they spend at least 20 to 30 minutes consuming the information that is there. So that, of course, gives us a huge opportunity in terms of employer branding, because that literally means you can have your employer brand be part of their lives on a daily basis, even on a minute-to-minute basis. So looking into that more specifically with regards to employers, so we asked students, do you look for employers on Facebook? So 62% of them say yes. Do you email employers through Facebook? 52% of them say yes. Have employers actually approached you through Facebook? And then 38% of them say yes. And they really, really like it. So 70% of them say they like it somewhat, and 4% of them say they like it a lot. So very, very few of them actually say that they don't like to communicate with employers through Facebook. And of course, this has impacted a lot companies' hiring strategies. So for example, if I look at PwC Hong Kong, they've actually literally moved their entire career application interface onto Facebook. Or if I look into EY, they've moved a lot of their content from their website onto Facebook because, of course, you know, when talent finds EY or PwC, etc., when they find them on Facebook and they scout or cruise through the material that's available there, if at the same time they can find out everything about the company without ever having to leave the platform, that's of course great. What we also need to remember here is we're dealing with the click generation, right? So their attention span is literally maybe 3 clicks long. If it's more than that for them to actually find the information that they're looking for, you've probably already lost them. And this is where a lot of career websites are failing as well, because the layout is so complicated or so it has so many layers for them to finally find the information that they're actually looking for. Now let's look at China and how things are there. So here the most popular social networks are, of course, Weixin, Sina, Microblog, Renren, Qzone, etc., etc. However, the one that's most effective for employer branding is Weibo. So here again, over 50% of students are looking at this network constantly, or at least several times per day. And then if we ask them, well, do you use it just for career? Already 3% of them say, I only use it for career. And then, of course, 58% of them already say, yes, I use it for social and career purposes. So this is the really important one in China. So again, asking them the same questions as before, 67% of students say that they look for employers after the career fair on Weibo. 86% of them already said that they're following employers there. 51% say that employers already reached out to them through this network. And then again, in the data below, how do they feel about it? We can see that they generally feel quite positive about the experience that they have through social media finding out about employers. So again, coming back to our questions, we've already answered quite a few of them. So we've answered, what is my goal? What are the communication preferences? Can I reach out to exactly my target group? Can I track how effective it is? And also, can I leverage this channel whenever I want? But now let's talk about reach. So how many people can I reach out through this channel? And again, I'm just looking at a few markets here. It'll be really difficult for us to look at every single market. However, I would just like to highlight a few. So let's start with Australia. So over 18 million people are online. 73% of these are actually active on social networks. Facebook is the most popular one here, followed by Twitter and then also by LinkedIn. If we then look into mobile penetration, we can see, over 24.4 million people have, or mobiles exist. 59% of those are actually smartphones. Looking further into Facebook, there's also a lot of preconceptions tainting Facebook. So I either get the feedback, oh, it's the old people's network or it's the young people's network. So actually what I would like to demonstrate here is that it's become everybody's network. So if I want to reach out to Australians aged from 18 to 23 in Australia, 2.4 million people are signed up. If I look at the age group from 24 to 29, it's 4.6. If I look at 30 to 49, it's 4.6 as well. If I look at 50 plus, it's 2.6 million. So as you can see, it's literally become everybody's network. I mean, what surprises me most actually is that my mother is even on Facebook these days. Whoever knew that was going to happen? Now let's look more at emerging economies, because of course emerging economies are somewhat different. So let's look at Indonesia. Jakarta is actually now seen as another Facebook hub. Indonesia is or Jakarta rather, is seen as Facebook's capital. And Indonesia itself is seen as the 5th largest market for Facebook. If we look at the online population, we've got 38 million people online. 79% of those are active social network users, and then as I already said, you know, Facebook really, really important here, and again across all age groups. But what's interesting about the Indonesian market is that Twitter here is also really, really important. So 80% of social network users are actually on Twitter, so it's a really hot network there. My only reservations a little bit with Twitter is that Twitter is a little bit like standing on a marketplace with a microphone, because you can't target your message. So basically, if I have something to say, you know, I can just post that on Twitter and it will reach out to anybody that's currently listening. So for me, that's not very controlled, right? So if I just want to reach out to a very specific subsegment of my target group, let's say engineering students in their 4th year who are going to do maybe a master's degree studying abroad or something like that. In Twitter, that'll be impossible to do. However, with LinkedIn and also with Facebook, I can absolutely reach out to those people because these networks know everything about me and they offer these very precise targeting options. Interestingly enough also about Indonesia is this is the population that actually spends the most time per day on the internet. So on average, Indonesians spend 9 hours per day on the internet. However, they're not yet doing that through smartphones. So we see, although there are 281 million mobiles currently registered in Indonesia, only 14% of those are smartphones. So here the desktop entry into the internet is of course still much, much more important. Let's look into Thailand as a comparison. Again, it's a little bit similar to Indonesia, except, you know, Twitter is not as hot here. We've got 17 million people online. Smartphone penetration is relatively low. However, we've got a pretty high sign up to social media, so 76% of people are active social network users. Again, Facebook being the more popular one. But over 50% here are actually Twitter users, so it might be an interesting network to look at if you are, you know, just doing a branding campaign and you don't mind having very broad outreach. Let's also look into China. So of course, China is a huge market. So we have 618 million people online. We've got many mobiles. And what's really interesting about China, which makes it quite different from the other markets, is that 81% of people that access the internet only do so via mobile. Right? So these guys aren't even, they don't even have a laptop, they don't even have a computer on a day-to-day basis, but they do have their mobile and access the internet through that. So that's something to definitely consider when you put together your channel selection and your outreach strategy to talent in China. And of course also a massive consideration for your website, right? Is it optimized towards mobile traffic, or is it going to be really difficult for them to complete their application through a mobile interface? This is definitely something you need to consider. And then of course at the top you see 87% of people are active social network users, and you can see the most popular channels and also the amount of people that are signed up to each of them as well. So WeChat, Weibo, as well as Renren. So this makes China, of course, such an interesting market as well. You know, for most other markets, it's quite simple. We've got Facebook, that's the one that's most prolific, usually followed by Twitter. As I've covered before, there are some pitfalls to Twitter. And then for professionals, you know, LinkedIn is super effective. However, China is a completely different ball game. There are many more social networks. Our typical social networks don't work there because of the gigantic firewall. And the way we reach out to talent is a completely different strategy there. So now we've answered all of these questions except for one. Looking at my budget, which channel can actually deliver results in a cost-effective way? So talking to many of our clients, I know that in some cases the budgets are also getting tighter. However, the expectations keep on rising. So we've developed this framework for you to consider when you do your budgeting for next year and you do your channel selection in terms of reaching out to talent. What you need to think about is how cost effective is the channel, right? Is it low cost, is it high cost, versus how high is the demand on the channel, right? So do students or professionals, talent in general, do they use it or do they not use it? And then on top of that, of course, as I mentioned before, you need to ask yourself questions like, can I target exactly the people I want to? And can I track exactly my efficiency? So these are questions you need to ask yourself on top of that. But if we were to plot out the channels then within this framework, you can then decide, okay, do you increase your spend on this year or do you decrease it? So for example, we see social media is becoming really, really popular in a lot of the markets, and it's really high on demand, so potentially it's a good idea to increase that. Print, as we discussed, is good at awareness. However, it's not very good at converting people to apply. So potentially it might be an idea to decrease that. If we look at the traditional media, it's really, really high cost. However, the demand is low, but it's really high cost. So maybe it might be worth decreasing that. How about campus? Campus is still high in demand in most countries. We saw the career fairs are still very popular. Cost is so-so, so it might be worth increasing that as well. So this is a framework according to which you can plan your media planning as well, or your media spend as well. All right, now we looked at how we can cut through the noise by choosing the right channels. Now let's look at how we can communicate the right things. And for this, I would like to first look at this video, which most of you probably already know, but maybe some of you don't. So I just want to start it, and hopefully the technology won't let us down.
What's your management style? Marielle. That's what we like to do with our people. Interesting. We'll see what happens. Things in which return is good. Thank you very much. Here's the rest of the room. Thank you. Sure, I'm fine. I'm just, I'll be the water in a second. Last time this happened, this is good. Awesome. I would say go back a little bit very international. How do people get infected by this?
We need to go. Come on, we need to get going.
Okay, so obviously that clip went very, very viral, and many of you probably already knew it from before. It's also not the newest one, but I really wanted us to look at this today because I think it's a great example of effective content that cuts through the noise, and that's precisely why it also went so viral. So what I wanted to look at today is, why is this good content? So you're probably going to say, well, because they had big budget to execute this. Obviously because it's a video and everybody loves video. Because it's Heineken and it's a big brand, it's a consumer brand, you know, it's about sports and beer, what's not to like. Because it's just for entertainment, of course that's why it works. Of course, there are some reasons. Sure, they had budget, Heineken is a big brand, and it's nice that it's a video, and of course it's entertaining through the elements that they highlight. However, that's not really why this works. The reason that this works is because, number one, it's useful. After looking at this, I know what Heineken is looking for in terms of candidates. I get an insight into the culture and what it might be like to work there. I get a glimpse into what people work there. I get a glimpse of the office. They made it very personable and very genuine to capture people's hearts and minds. I think after watching this, one feels quite inspired, and it really touches one in a very personal way. This, of course, makes sure that it resonates with the target group by appealing to something that they care, worry, and think about. Just besides sports and beer, of course, you know, the experience of an interview, you know, and how you feel about that, the feeling of really wanting a job with a company, and the fear of not impressing and failing in the interview. Over and above, it's, of course, inspiring. The candidate is portrayed as a very normal person that went above and beyond to help others, right? So this is very relatable, and others could see themselves following in their footsteps, right? Thinking, okay, I as a normal person, I even could work at Heineken. So that makes it very relatable and inspiring. And of course it's entertaining, you know, besides being useful and actually answering a lot of the questions that talent have from employers, because they really want to see these days what's going on in your organization, right? They don't want glossy recruitment material. They don't want you to tell them what it's like. They want to see what it's like, ideally from your employees. So with this clip, although it's very entertaining because they build you know, a lot of fun elements into it, they do answer all the relevant questions that talent might have. So we don't all have Heineken's budgets, so how can we make our mark? So as I said, we need to really communicate the right things. And how we can identify that is through 3 steps. First of all, you need to think about what you offer as an employer. You need to know what is attractive to your specific target groups that you're reaching out to, and you need to look at what your competitors are doing. And then you really need to look at the sweet spot. That's where the magic happens, right? So by looking at what you offer and communicating what is attractive to the target group out of what you offer, however different from your competitors, you of course are more likely to not only communicate things that are true to your organization and also attractive to your target group, and thus nailing, you know, the nail on the head, but also ensuring differentiation from your competitors. So as a very basic model, this is what you should really keep in mind before you put together your communication strategy. Now let's put this into best practice examples, what really works. So we've seen great examples around employee testimonials working. Online contests work really well. Live webinars or Q&A sessions have fantastic traction. A lot of employers are setting up their own talent Facebook pages or Weibo pages now and seeing wonderful results with that. Sharing the behind-the-scenes look at a company shows great results. This is, of course, could be a video, but moreover, it could be even just, you know, text and article with imagery that works as well. So let's look at some practical examples. I'm very aware that we've run out of time, so just very, very briefly. Here is an example of Walt Disney sharing, actually this example comes from China. So here we're appealing to students from the East China Normal University as part of their target group, and we leverage the story of this employee who already works there and, you know, who loves working there, and basically she shares her experience through an interview of why she likes working there, why she got interested in Disney, and what her actual experience is like. So again, we give, those values of Walt Disney and what they offer as an employer, so essentially their EVP attributes, a face and a name and something that others can relate to. So students currently studying at the East China Normal University can look at this person and feel like, oh, actually, that could be me. This is her experience. Maybe I could have that experience as well. Here is another example of behind the scenes. So this company is CSC. CSC from the top, from the outside, doesn't seem like the most interesting organization. And that one of their key challenges was really to attract young talent. So people within industry already know them very well, but young talent, university graduates are hardly aware of them and have a really tough time to fill, those graduate roles. So to give more of an insight into what the company is like and to actually make a company interesting that, from the top doesn't seem interesting at all, it's really valuable to share employee stories explaining why they joined the company, why they love the company and what they do there. What's then also super effective is actually sharing, for example, customer cases, really interesting projects that they're working on at the moment. So for example, in the case of CSC, one of their clients is NASA. So through storytelling and sharing how their different employees worked on this project, this company that from the outside seems very, very boring suddenly became very attractive and very exciting to work for, even for young people. And whilst, we communicate about something that's really attractive to the target group, we of course still need to make sure that we're saying things that are very true about the organization as well. Another one that I want to show you is a Facebook example of the Johnson & Johnson career page. So here we have a content strategy focusing entirely on employee testimonials and doing this in a very genuine, down-to-earth way and yet still in a branded way. So you can see it's all very consistent J&J. However, how we do this is in different formats. So for example, the trainees or the young associates get the opportunity to talk about their opportunity working for J&J and their experience of the graduate program. They get to share that through a little video that they even can take just with their mobile, and then we Johnson & Johnsonify it, and it actually resonates really, really strong because it's so real. It's not something that was put through a marketing agency to make it look really, really glossy. It's very real, and therefore it resonates. And again, people can see themselves being like these two young gentlemen and actually having a real, genuine opportunity at Johnson & Johnson. Equally, we look at their leadership team. For example, here we've got the head of marketing and communications, and we interview her on why did she join Johnson & Johnson, why does she love to work there. And of course, again, this brings it down to a very relatable level, but at the same time, it's extremely aspirational because, of course, one day they could become the head of communications in that market. At the same time, we use quotes. So, from not only research but also experience, and you probably know this already from your own experiences on social media as well, quotes work really, really well. So here, again, we make it extremely personable. So if we look here at Mariana, we interviewed her on why she is very excited to join the Johnson & Johnson graduate program. And basically, her story was that at the beginning, she was not very excited because it meant that she would have to break up with her boyfriend. But then he actually also got a job in Johnson & Johnson, and now they're moving to the city, the location where Johnson & Johnson offers its graduate program together, and she's very, very excited about the future that they're going to have there as graduates in their trainee program. So again, all of these stories, although they're absolutely Johnson & Johnson and true to brand and quite branded, they're all very, very real stories that people can relate to. Then also online contests work very well. So this again is an example from China, something we did for IBM. This is an online game. So in the first step, users follow IBM Campus on WeChat, and they get an instant push of the activity. They reply to the keywords and follow the instructions, and they send a photo and they comment, and they engage with the content on this contest. And then next, they enter the portal. They need to offer some of their personal information, which is of course great for building a database or a talent pool long term of people that, again, talking about that talent community that a lot of employers are moving towards now. This type of activity feeds into that. And then in terms of step 3, here the game really starts. They answer different questions. Through that, they get to know the company, they get to know the EVP, and they engage with the company at a much deeper level. They collect badges, they share it with their friends, and through that it has potential to become viral. So it has all the components to be a great game and to be really, really engaging and take an employer brand to a very much next level in a very meaningful way. So the bottom line here is the talent journey is changing, and that's why the HR function is changing as well. Recruiters need to become more like marketers, and they need new skills. Everything from ideation, copywriting, art direction, art production, media planning, campaign management and optimization, ROI tracking, etc. So my question to myself is, with us moving into the space of where HR is becoming a function, a part of the C-suite, employer branding is becoming strategic, linked to the company's overall business goals, and employer branding becoming really key in terms of building that talent community, and us sort of moving away from that sort of just reaching out to talent on an ad hoc basis to fill positions. In some years, will the position of a headhunter, will it still exist? So I thought that might be some interesting food for thought for us to discuss another day. Okay, just to close off, this is our approach to managing the talent journey. If we had to give any advice to you, this would be it. To cut through the noise, to make sure that you stand out, you need to produce really good content. You can do that by basing your content strategy on research and really understanding what your target group, what makes your target groups tick. Right? Only if you communicate really good things that they care about, that they worry about, will they be compelled to engage with it. Once you have your story, you need to bring that story to life. This obviously can be your strategy as well as all the platforms that are part of that and all the channels. So from your career website to your campus presence, maybe even your print activities that you're still doing, it all needs to be integrated with each other. It needs to live your story. It needs to live and breathe your employer brand in a consistent way. Where most employers then end up still going wrong is the amplification bit, namely bringing your story to your target audience. So keep in mind, it's not enough just to have a beautiful career website. You also, or a beautiful recruitment video. You need to have a mechanism to actually get people to see it. And then overall, you need to be able to measure your results. I mean, we live in a world where we need to prove, that whatever we're doing is actually working. We need to prove that we're getting bang for our buck. And a lot of CEOs or a lot of leaders are pushing back and asking, well, what is the ROI of this specific activity? So putting measurements and KPIs into place and actively tracking those will not, of course, just be beneficial in terms of reporting your activity and your results, but also help you in terms of streamlining what you're doing, filtering out all the activities that are not working, and just focusing your attention on what really is. All right, that is all that I had for today. I know we overran by quite a bit. I'm sorry, I had so much to say. I even had so many more slides to share with you today. I really thank you for joining today's session. Do you still want to ask any questions on anything that we discussed today?
Okay, Marielle, thanks for the presentation. I say, I think we will close no later than 5:30. So if you still have any questions, you can raise your question by texting me through the chat function, or you can just raise your hand. Yeah, Someone asked, will we share the slides afterwards? Yes, I will send everyone an email about the slides, and also we have recorded the webinar, so you can look at the video afterwards, and you can also share it with your colleagues who is not able to attend today. Any other questions?
No?
No?
Okay. Okay, good. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Again, sorry that it took a bit longer to get through everything, but I hope it was interesting. I hope it gave you a lot of food for thought. If any of the things are unclear or you want to investigate anything at a much deeper level, please don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marielle.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I will end the session.
Thanks. Bye.
For Chi, Ju, Shi, yes, we will send you slides afterwards. Okay, bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.